As an architect, I've struggled in the past when projects come down to interior design. For some reason, furniture choices that once seemed great on screen can sometimes feel a little bit off when they arrive in person. But over time I realised that it's less about the appearances of furniture in isolation and more about the recipe of our choices as a whole. So in this video I thought I'd go over 6 principles that help with choosing furniture and pairing materials, which might help save us from making costly design decisions down the line. Principle 1. Budget. As a designer, our budgets are almost always decided by the client. However, when working on your own project, it's easy to push your budget to one side, granting yourself more freedom to think about exciting things like the size of your snack cupboard and the comfort of your sofa. But without placing constraints on your finances, things can quickly get out of hand, causing you to get lured into spending much more than you need to, and potentially causing you the uncomfortable burden of unnecessary debt, which could have otherwise been avoided. If you're fortunate enough to have an unlimited budget, it's not really that hard to make something look impressive, as when everything is top spec, it usually looks pretty good. All good designers understand this, but what makes good design great design is how constraints are elegantly navigated to provide compelling solutions. In order to do this, it's important to get your priorities in order, so you need to work with your budget to steer the direction of your project. What I like to do is prioritize all of my project's needs for fixtures and furnishings in a clear hierarchy, according to how the space will be used, and how certain items might be more important than others. For example, if you're the kind of person or client who likes spending their evenings watching Netflix, you may want to allocate more of your budget towards a quality sofa. However, if you're really into entertaining guests, you may want to prioritize high quality items for your dining area instead. This way you can negotiate the constraints of your budget with clear priorities, rather than just letting things spiral out of control, which often forces people to cut corners down the line. Principle 2. Functionality. Apart from an artistic touch, all that good design really is identifying a set of specific needs and fulfilling them in the most elegant and efficient way possible. Even though this sounds simple enough, I find that a lot of people get stuck in establishing what exactly those needs are. So the first and most crucial thing you need to do is identify your needs clearly, which is known in the design world as creating a brief. Unfortunately, a lot of designers do not spend enough time here, which can cause setbacks and frustrations throughout the duration of a project. So if you can, it's important to get the brief right first try, no matter how long it takes. Form should always follow function, as there's no point of having a beautifully designed space if it isn't comfortable. So the best way that I've found to do this is to list out all of the items that need solutions, according to how you or your client uses the space, finding homes for things like vacuum cleaners, laundry baskets, and sports equipment, as these lesser used items are often overlooked and can easily catch you out. Doing this allows you to establish approximate areas and sizing for all of the functions you need, like the suitable size of a fridge or a dishwasher for your kitchen, or the size of a dining table in relation to a sofa when planning out your living area. This is known in the design world as space planning, and by taking these early steps, you can start designing in a way that is as efficient as possible before you even get down to the way that things look. So you can focus on important constraints like the location of windows or sockets or radiators to make sure that you're getting the very most out of the space that you use to avoid a compromised final design. Principle 3. Taste. Once you have the bare bones of your design and you know that it works, only then can you really start thinking about how you want it to look. I personally dig minimalist interiors as they're so calming, and these tend to lean into Scandinavian and mid-century modern furniture choices. I know that I like this style of furniture as I've been designing interiors for some time now, but it's also important for you to have a clear idea of what you really like before you start picking items, as I find that it's common for us to be not so clear about what's in our heads until we can communicate it through imagery. This is why it's important to research what it is exactly that you like. I love using websites such as Dezeen or Pinterest to start collecting imagery that I'm really drawn to, so that I can collate it into some kind of desktop folder or just a Pinterest board, where the Pinterest save button as a browser extension comes in really handy. These then become reference images and are what designers often refer to as design precedents. Not precedents like Donald Trump, but precedents that are completed projects that preceded yours and then serve as examples or guides to refer back to. By going through this process, you can establish a common theme amongst what it is that you or your team really like, and you may notice that you're subconsciously drawn to things that you might not have noticed earlier on, like thinly framed artwork, patterned rugs, and pottery. Principle 4. Palette. When you pair too many colours together, things can tend to start looking pretty chaotic. When I see images of interiors that I'm really drawn to, it's usually pretty clear that there's an underlying order of several colours and shades that cause the design to look coherent and pleasing to the eye. Something that's really easy to forget is that actually every material in your home or project has its own colour. For example, it's likely that the paint on your walls is a certain shade of white and the timber on your floor is a certain shade of brown. These all contribute towards a colour palette before you even consider adding furniture into the mix. So it's important to ensure that whatever you add, it doesn't cause the palette to become incoherent and jumbled. I've noticed that I tend to design with only really around 5 colours and tones at any one time, and these colours often come from natural materials like timber, plants, and stone. I think this is because I really feel that nature is the best designer, so I end up referencing it as much as I can, using the earthy tones and pastel colours of landscapes. You can always go with brighter colour schemes too, but be warned that they can be quite intense for residential settings, and I find that they're much harder to make look good, especially as colour is a very subjective topic. However, if for example you really like the colour purple, it certainly doesn't mean that you shouldn't embrace it and find a way to make it work. Principle 5. Texture. What's interesting about texture is that the way that you apply it suggests the way that the space should be used. For example, naturally, hard surfaces, like those in kitchens, suggest a space for work, and soft materials, like those in a living area, suggest a space for relaxation and play. However, this is something that can be easily overlooked. This happened to me in the past when I first designed our micro apartment. Although a lot of people loved the design of the space because of its multifunctionality, the video didn't really convey the way that the space made you feel. As humans, we have 5 senses, but B-roll and photography only communicates to our eyes, leaving the rest up to our imagination. With interiors, you also have to consider the way things feel to our sense of touch and the way things sound in regards to our hearing, and this is especially true if you're going to be living in spaces that haven't really considered either of these things. For instance, sleek hard surfaces may look great in a magazine or in a YouTube video, but in real life they can feel echoey and cold, which makes for a really unpleasant experience. Additionally, a lack of texture can make a space look sterile and uninviting, but if you use too much texture in your designs, it's also easy to end up with a space that feels really busy and overwhelming. In my experience, picking textures is a bit like balancing yin and yang, finding the right balance between hard and soft, and making sure that you don't have too much of one and none of the other. Principle 6. Shapes. Finally, the last principle that I think is really important to consider is shapes, as this is something that I didn't really realize earlier on in my career. One time I came up with a design for an office environment, and the client came back saying that it felt very masculine. Aside from an obvious blue color choice, I realized that the shapes of furniture are a major factor to what makes a design feel more masculine or more feminine. And as a designer, you have the unique ability to swing things one way or another. Working with shapes is similar to working with textures in the way that shapes can also be hard or soft. So, putting gender stereotypes aside, a design with a lot of sharp corners and right angles feels hard and masculine, whereas a design with a lot of curves feels more delicate and feminine. However, if you go too far with either, you'll end up with your space feeling either too strict or rigid, or too loose and disorienting. So, like with texture, you also want to have a pleasant balance of hard and soft, so you don't end up too far on one side, unless it's part of the intended look that you're going for. I find it's a lot easier to fall into the trap of designing overly masculine spaces, as right angles are just so much easier to work with. However, a good example of how you might balance this out is by introducing furniture with curved edges, or by even introducing subtle and less obvious items like spherical light fixtures, soft cushions, or even wavy throws and flowy curtains. Even though I may consider myself to have the most impeccable taste in the world, when it comes to design, no one can ever say that I'm right and you're wrong, because at the end of the day, that's what's great about design, the fact that it's so subjective and so diverse. So hopefully from this video you don't get the impression that this is advice about a certain style of design, but more so a helpful set of considerations for establishing your own specific taste. What's great about being a designer professionally is that there's endless room for experimentation, and by mixing various pieces of inspiration together, it can allow your design to tell stories by making cultural and historical references that add an even deeper layer of meaning past the way something looks or feels. For our own homes, there's nothing worse than spending hours picking furniture to only hate how it looks in the space when it finally arrives. So hopefully this video was useful in avoiding these kinds of mistakes, and if you enjoyed it, it would be great if you could leave me a like and drop me a comment down in the comment section below. And finally, if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and you may also enjoy checking out some of my other design videos like how I ranked first at architecture school and the follow-up video that I made for my minimalist micro apartment makeover. Once again, thanks so much for watching, happy designing, and I will see you in the next one.